Welcome and thank you for joining me for this quiet journey into the past. In this story, we will take a long, gentle walk through medieval Europe. There will be no rush. We will move slowly, pausing often, noticing details, and lingering on the small things that made up ordinary life. Perhaps as you listen, you will feel your eyes grow heavy. Perhaps the slow rhythm of the words will carry you into sleep. That is perfectly fine. The past will still be here when you wake. The night is barely broken when the harbor stirs to life. Mist lingers over black water, curling like pale smoke between the masts of silent ships. The tide sighs against the worn pilings, and somewhere a gull cries, a lonely sound that echoes across the sleeping town. Lanterns glow faintly along the quay, their light soft and golden against the gray of dawn. Cobblestones are slick with sea spray. The smell of salt, tar, and yesterday's catch mingles with the smoke of early fires. Slowly the quiet breaks. A fisherman stirs in his boat, drawing in the lines he set before moonrise. His boots creak on damp planks, and the small craft rocks with his weight. He hums under his breath, an old tune, perhaps one his father taught him. From a nearby shed comes the rasp of a knife being drawn across a whetstone. Another man shoulders a coil of rope and disappears down the pier. The air is cool, sharp with the promise of morning work. Farther down the quay, a great cog lies moored, its hull dark and wet from travel. Its square sail is furled for now, but soon it will be unfurled and catch the first wind. Two deckhands sweep water from the planks, their brooms thudding softly. Another climbs to the forecastle, checking the anchor chain. A barrel of pitch smoulders near the shipwright's shed, its scent rich and heavy. Before the sun has fully risen, the harbor is alive with quiet industry. Men mending nets, merchants tallying goods, sailors shaking off sleep. Beyond the working vessels, small skiffs and fishing boats cluster like birds at rest. Nets hang to dry, heavy with the smell of the sea. Buoys bob in the current, faintly knocking against each other with the rhythm of the tide. Dogs trot between the legs of workers, tails wagging as they search for scraps. A boy runs past with a basket of bread, the smell warm and yeasty. He dodges a sailor with a coil of sailcloth on his shoulder, then leaps a pudded with easy grace. Life here begins early, shaped by water and wind. At the water edge stands the harbor master's office, a low timbered building with salt-whitened walls and a roof of weathered tiles. Inside, ledgers line the shelves, thick with years of ink and sand. The harbor master himself steps outside now, wrapped in a long cloak against the chill. He scans the tide, the ships, the men at work. In one hand he carries a small bell. When he rings it, its tone is thin but commanding. New arrivals will soon need berths, and departing vessels must clear the channel before the tide turns. Above the harbor, the town stirs more slowly. Narrow lanes run down toward the water, lined with stone houses and timbered inns. Shutters creak open to let in the first light. Somewhere a baker slides loaves into his oven, the smell drifting down to the quay. From a small chapel comes the sound of a single bell, calling the devout to early prayer. A merchant yawns on his doorstep, surveying the wagons that will soon haul goods from ship to market. The sea gives life here. Everything begins and ends with the harbor. Sunrise comes at last. The horizon brightens from iron gray to silver, then to soft gold. Light spills over the masts, catching in the rigging and waking the gulls into a storm of cries. Sails begin to rise, snapping as morning wind slips in from the sea. The great cog heaves against its ropes. Deckhands scramble, shouting to one another. Fishermen push their boats from shore, oars dipping silently. The harbor now hums with motion, every sound layered, wood creaking, water slapping, gulls calling, men laughing low. Yet even in its bust, the harbor keeps a quiet dignity. Old timbers remember countless dawns, soldiers embarking for war, pilgrims bound for far-off shrines, merchants hoping for distant wealth. Every rope and spar carries the smell of salt and stories untold. Somewhere a boy dreams of sailing beyond the horizon. Somewhere an old sailor remembers a storm survived, and still the water comes and goes, the tide faithful as the turning of the seasons. As the sun climbs higher, the harbor is fully awake. Crates of wool and grain appear on the docks, barrels roll toward waiting ships, and fishermen call their morning catch to the fishwives who haggle with knowing eyes. Dogs bark, bells ring, and the first tavern doors swing open to offer mugs of hot ale to cold hands. Another day of sea-bound labor has begun, slow, steady, and as ancient as the tide itself. The sea lies close and breathing, a great gray-green expanse stretching to the horizon. Here, along a quiet inlet where waves fold gently against the shingle, a fishing village wakes. Low cottages of timber and stone huddle close together, their roofs thatched and weathered by years of salt and wind. Nets hang like faded banners along walls and door frames. The air is damp and alive with the mingled scents of brine, smoke, and drying fish. Before the light is full, fishermen stir from their beds. Inside small rooms lit by a single candle, rough wool cloaks are pulled on and boots laced tight. Wives and daughters move quietly, tending to small hearth fires and packing food for the hours ahead. Coarse bread, dried herring, a wedge of hard cheese wrapped in cloth. A dog barks once, eager to follow, then settles when told to stay. Outside, a thin mist curls along the lane that leads down to the boats. At the water edge, the boats wait like patient animals. Most are small, wide, sturdy craft with curved prows and patched sails. Some are hauled above the tide line, their keels resting on sand and pebble. Others float tethered to wooden stakes driven deep into the shallows. Ropes creak softly as the tide shifts. A few lanterns still burn, casting pools of light on wet planks and coiled line. Beyond them, the open sea darkens toward a deeper blue. A young boy, perhaps 10, scrambles aboard his father's skiff, eager hands clutching the mast, his breath plumes in the cold air. The man follows, steady and slow, a cap pulled low over his brow. Together they unfurl the small sail, careful not to tangle the patched cloth. Two older fishermen work nearby, their talk low and easy. They check the knots on their nets, their fingers quick and practiced despite the chill. These men have lived their lives to the rhythm of tides and weather, measuring days not by bells but by wind and water. Behind the cottages, smoke rises from sheds where fish are smoked and dried. A woman drapes more silver-scaled herring across wooden racks, turning each with a quiet hand. The smell of smoke and brine mingles with the early morning air. Children still too young for sea work scurry to gather driftwood for the fires, their bare feet quick over cold sand. One pauses to watch the boats push off, eyes wide with longing. Farther at the lane stands the village shrine, a small stone structure with a carved figure of a saint watching the waves. Sailors touch its doorframe or bow their heads briefly as they pass. Inside, a single candle burns even now, tended each day by an elder woman whose back is bent but hands still steady. Offerings of shells, coins, and bits of twine rest at the statue's feet. No ship leaves this harbor without some quiet moment here, asking for safety and return. The first boats begin to move, oars dipping soundlessly. The tide is high, the wind favorable. Sails unfurl and catch a pale gold light as the sun lifts itself over the horizon. Gulls wheel and cry above, sensing the promise of bait and catch. The water shivers under their wings, rippling toward the open sea. On shore, those who remain, the old, the young, and those mending gear, watch silently until the boats grow small and the sails vanish into the morning haze. By mid-morning, the village hums with quiet work. Nets are patched, floats repaired, ropes coiled and tarred. Some men repair the hull of a larger boat that will soon brave deeper waters. Hammer strikes against wood. Pitch warms in an iron pot. Women gut and salt the fish brought in yesterday, their knives flashing with swift precision. Buckets of entrails are carried to waiting gulls beyond the tide line. The steady rhythm of this work is older than memory, a craft passed down from father to son, mother to daughter. Near the beach, a small fire burns where a kettle steams. Two old men sit beside it, warming their hands while they wait for a returning boat. Their talk drifts like the smoke, the weather a catch remembered from long ago, news from the nearest market town. They are wrapped in heavy cloaks, faces creased by wind and years, yet their eyes stay sharp, scanning the sea with every pause in speech. When the boats return, the village shifts again. First comes the sound, distant calls and creak of rigging, then shapes grow on the horizon. Sails flutter down as the skiffs glide toward the shallows. Men leap into knee-deep water to drag the craft ashore, laughing, calling out their catch. Nets glitter with silver fish, some still flapping weakly. Children rush forward to help unload, delighted with the gleam of scales. Dogs bark wildly, hoping for scraps. Soon baskets of fish line the beach, herring, mackerel, the occasional cod. Buyers arrive, a trader from the nearby town with a cart, a cook from the local inn, a monk from the abbey upriver. Prices are murmured, coins change hands. The work is practical, brisk, but not joyless. There are jokes and quiet pride when a boat brings in a heavy haul. A day's labor at sea is never easy, but it feeds the village and keeps the hearths warm. By late afternoon, the tide has turned and most boats are once again pulled ashore, their sails drying in the sun. The village settles into slower rhythms. Smoke rises thick and blue from cook fires. The scent of roasting fish drifts over the shore. Children play at building pretend boats with driftwood. A fiddler tunes his instrument by a cottage door. Somewhere a woman sings while hanging nets to dry, her voice carrying softly on the salt wind. Evening brings a hush as the sea darkens to indigo. The returning fishermen sit tired but content outside their homes, bowls of hot stew in their hands. Stories are shared of changing winds, of a near tangle in a net, of distant sails glimpsed far out where the water turns black. Lanterns glow one by one, lighting the crooked lane back from the beach. The shrine candle is checked and trimmed for the night. A dog curls up beside a boat, tail flicking in sleep. At last quiet returns. The tide whispers against the shore. The stars appear above the dark water. Somewhere far out, a bell on a buoy rings faintly, carried on the wind. In every cottage the fire burns low, nets dry in the soft night breeze, and those who earn their living by the sea sleep knowing it will call them again at dawn. At some point, every road meets water, a slow brown river sliding through meadows, a deep green torrent roaring from mountain snow, a lazy tidal channel widening toward the sea. Sooner or later, the traveler halts before a stretch of moving current. In the Middle Ages, such crossings were both lifeline and trial. Bridges and ferries decided the shape of trade, pilgrimage, and everyday travel. To reach the other side could mean safety and fortune. To be stranded could mean delay, danger, even death. Rivers were the natural boundaries of medieval Europe. They divided lordships and dioceses, marked toll rights and markets, and formed frontiers where languages changed. They also nourished life. Mills turned on their banks, fields drank their water, fish filled baskets, and towns sprang up at fords and ferries. Yet rivers were capricious. They flooded without warning, swept away carts and hid treacherous holes. For those on foot or wheel, crossing was a moment of humility before nature. The oldest crossing was the ford, a shallow stretch of fir gravel where oxen could wade and wagons roll with luck. But fords were tricky. After rain, harmless trickle could become fierce torrent. Merchants dreaded them. Pilgrims prayed at nearby shrines. Many fords were marked by wayside crosses where lives had been lost. In time, communities improved them with stones and timbers, but they remained vulnerable to flood. So came the bridge, first of timber. Villagers felled oak and drove piles deep into mud, laying planks and rails. Simple footbridges crossed streams, larger ones bore carts. Yet wood rots, ice splits, floods sweep away whole spans. Building and keeping a bridge demanded money and labor, and thus the right to maintain one and charge a toll became valuable. Lords, abbots, towns, and even wealthy guilds built bridges to secure trade and glory. Some bridges grew into marvels. Great piers of stone rose from rivers, arches carrying road high above flood. In France and Spain, in Italy and Germany, medieval masons built spans that still stand. They cut cofferdams to work dry in riverbed, raised pointed arches to shed force of current, and topped them with chapels or towers. A bridge was more than engineering, it was civic pride, symbol of protection and lucrative gate for tolls. Travelers paid coins to cross. In return, they found safer passage and often market beyond. Bridge tolls shaped routes. A shrewd lord set fair fee to lure merchants. A greedy one lost trade to rival ford or ferry upstream. Some bridges were declared free by royal charter, a great boon to commerce. Others became famous for oppression. Chroniclers tell of merchants detouring miles to avoid a baron's grasping hand. At times, whole towns rose because a bridge offered reliable, cheap crossing fares bloomed where caravans gathered to wait their turn. Ferries thrived where bridges failed. At wide tidal rivers, deep gorges, or shifting sandbanks, no stable span could last. Here the ferryman ruled. His craft might be humble punt poled across calm water, or broad flatboat guided by rope or chain. Some ferries used sail when wind served. Others hauled themselves hand over hand on fixed cables. At busy sites, the service ran all day. Wagons rolled aboard, horses snorted, pilgrims clutched staves while water lapped. Fares were set by custom but haggling common. The ferryman's life was hard and respected. He woke with dawn to check boat, bail water, grease ropes, mend planks. He knew the moods of current, the sandbars and snags, the safe angle for landing. In flood he might risk life-saving traveler swept away. In winter he battled ice floes. Many ferrymen were famed for courage and cunning. Some became local heroes, yet income was uncertain. Storms stopped trade, lords demanded cut, and pirates or bandit threatened. Crossings often became small worlds of their own. An inn would spring up nearby, offering food to those waiting on tide or turn. Blacksmiths worked close, repairing carts broken by rough banks. A tiny chapel might stand where pilgrims prayed before stepping aboard. Markets formed where caravans gathered, bread, ale, charms, spare harness. News flowed here faster than elsewhere, brought by every traveler forced to pause. There was also ritual and superstition. Travelers tossed coins or herbs into water for safe passage. Ferrymen hung saints' images on prow, often Saint Christopher, patron of travelers. Some bridges bore chapels mid-span, where one knelt to thank God for safe crossing or pray for souls lost to river. Toll keepers might keep relic or holy water to bless those paying. Folk tales flourished. Devils tricked into building bridges overnight. Saints fighting river spirits. Ghostly processions on stormy nights. The crossing shaped daily life too. Farmers timed trips to market by ferry schedule. Lovers met at bridges midpoint, exchanging gifts before parting. Soldiers guarded spans in war. Whoever held bridge held road. Kings planned campaigns around fords and crossings. Even humble peasants knew strategic value. A broken bridge could starve a town. A secret ford could save an army. Engineers, though they would not use that name, were prized. A master carpenter might design trestles and pile drivers. A mason planned piers and arches. Towns invested heavily. Abbeys sometimes funded bridges as pious works. Records tell of brotherhoods of the bridge. Lay confraternities devoted to building and repairing one span for generations. Donations poured in. Travelers prayed for benefactors' souls as they crossed. Flood was ever the enemy. Whole spans vanished overnight. Ferries swept downstream. Chroniclers note winters when ice tore timbers apart, or springs when sudden melt drowned toll houses. Rebuilding could take years and fortunes. Some towns built stone only after losing Woodbridge again and again. Each flood left stories of daring rescues, lost wagons, floating barrels, miraculous survivals. Season colored the experience. In spring, swollen rivers roared, ferries risky, bridges creaking under meltwater. Summer meant easy passage but long queues at busy trade routes. Autumn with its rains raised current again. Merchants hurried before floods. Winter froze some fords solid. Carts rattled across ice, yet could break treacherously without warning. Ferrymen chopped channels, cursed freezing ropes, and sometimes laid planks across half-frozen span. By night, the crossing changed mood. Lanterns swung on bridge towers, reflecting gold in black water. Ferrymen rode under stars, boat rocking gently while passengers murmured prayers. Wolves howled beyond banks, an owl cried. To cross at night was brave or desperate, but sometimes need drove travelers onward. The river under moonlight felt wider, darker, filled with mystery. Economy flourished around these points. Toll keepers counted coins by lamplight. Inns prospered. Carpenters built carts durable enough for rough ramps. Smiths sold fittings for ferry chains. Even beggars knew good bridge could bean alms from softened travelers. Artists sketched spans, poets sang of faithful ferryman or cursed toll lord. Some crossings became famous meeting places. Peace treaties signed mid-bridge, rival lords halting on neutral planks. Pilgrims from many lands mingled waiting for boat. Markets at such spots grew into towns. What began as lone ferry hut became bustling port. A whole settlement might rise simply because river demanded pause. Yet each crossing, humble or grand, carried a sense of threshold. To step on bridge or boat was to leave something and face unknown shore. Merchants felt risk and hope. Pilgrims whispered prayers. Soldiers tightened grip on sword. Lovers parted or reunited. A journey's most vivid memory was often the river, the hiss of water, the sway of boat, the hum and creak of boards. Even today, many medieval bridges still arch across European rivers, worn smooth by countless feet. Their stones hold whispers of carts and cloaks, of prayers and curses, laughter and fear. Some ferries run still in quiet corners, little changed from centuries past. So if you imagine medieval travel, picture not only roads and carts, but this, a silver river blocking the way, lantern light on wet planks, ferrymen calling softly, bridge toll ringing in coffer. These crossings shaped the map of trade and faith, one boatload, one arch, one cautious step at a time. Before dawn, the quayside is a place of whispers and muffled footfalls. The tide has crept high into the harbor, black and glassy under the last pale stars. Along the wharf, a single great merchant cog rocks at its mooring, its wide belly laden but not yet sealed for the voyage. Tarred hull gleams wet, ropes groan softly. A faint lantern glow shows where men already move like shadows about their work. Soon, when the sun lifts, the ship will slip its lines and take the tide out toward distant coast. The ship herself is an old but sturdy craft, broad of beam with a single towering mast. Her high stern castle looms like a small fortress, windows shuttered against the night air. Along her deck are barrels lashed with rope, bales of cloth stacked under oilskin, and crates stamped with the marks of far-off merchants, a swan, a lion, a sheaf of grain. Her square sail, furled tight, waits like a sleeping wing to be loosed to the morning wind. The work begins below decks, where lanterns sway from hooks and throw flickering light on sweating backs. Stevedores pass heavy sacks hand to hand, salt, grain, dried fish, bolts of dyed wool. Others guide a cart laden with amphorae of wine down the gangplank, careful not to jostle their fragile cargo. Each item is ticked off on a wax tablet by the ship's clerk, a wiry man with ink-stained fingers and a face lined from years of sea ledgers. His quiet voice counts and notes, never missing a bundle. Near the prow, the ship's carpenter hammers a last set of wedges into place, testing the seams for tightness. Pitch bubbles and smokes in a cauldron beside him, filling the air with its rich, tarry scent. He smooths a bead of it along a plank, seals a gap, and nods with satisfaction. Beside him, the boatswain coils fresh rope, inspecting every length for fray. Blocks creak as the rigging is checked. Men climb the mast like dark insects, nimble despite the hour. On the quay, a different rhythm unfolds. Merchants arrive wrapped in cloaks, their faces wary but alert. Some ride mules laden with last-minute goods. Others come on foot with bundles of parchment and seals. Bargains are struck in low voices, space in a crate for a few more bolts of cloth, a small chest of spices to be wedged under the captain's bunk. Coins clink quietly. Documents are signed by lantern light, wax melted and stamped. This is the lifeblood of the medieval sea, trade conducted at odd hours and bound by trust, risk, and hope. Nearby, sailors gather their few possessions, a rolled blanket, a spare shirt, a knife, a carved charm. Some wear amulets of saints, others carry small pouches of salt to ward off evil. They laugh softly, slap one another's shoulders, yet beneath the humor is a shared unease. The sea is generous, but she is never tame. An older sailor murmurs a prayer before touching the ship's hull. Another tosses a coin into the water with a grin that is half hope, half superstition. The captain arrives as the eastern sky begins to pale. He is a tall man wrapped in a heavy cloak, his beard shot with gray, but his eyes sharp as a hawk's. His boots strike the stones as he walks the length of the quay, greeting the harbour master with a firm clasp. They speak briefly of tides and weather. The wind should hold from the west, enough to carry them clear of the headland before nightfall. Still, the captain glances seaward with a practiced wariness. A dark smudge of cloud sits low on the horizon. Orders come brisk and quiet. The last wagons are unloaded and the gangplank is cleared. The purser checks the food stores, sacks of hard biscuit, dried peas, smoked meat, barrels of fresh water and beer. 2 live chickens cluck uneasily in a crate. A small goat, destined to provide milk, bleats once before being coaxed below. Scent of straw and salt mingles with that of tar and pitch. The ship, once an empty shell, is becoming a world unto itself, stocked and ready for weeks at sea. As full dawn breaks, the village stirs beyond the docks. Children run down to watch the bustle. Women call last farewells to husbands, sons, or brothers sailing out. Some wives hand up small bundles, letters, dried apples, scraps of cloth from home. A priest arrives in a dark robe to bless the voyage. He sprinkles salt water across the deck and murmurs prayers in Latin while the crew stand bareheaded and solemn. A few sailors cross themselves. One kisses a locket before tucking it back into his shirt. Now the ship herself wakes. Her great sail is unfurled part way, catching the first warm light of morning. It snaps and bellies, then falls slack as the men adjust ropes and wait for the tide's pull. The anchor chain rattles. A drum beats slowly to keep height with the hauling. The smell of tar deepens as ropes strain and the ship shifts, heavy with goods and dreams of profit. The harbor fills with sound, gulls shrieking, wood creaking, the low calls of men working as one body. On the quiet side, merchants and villagers step back to watch. Some cross themselves as the cog inches forward, others cheer softly, hats lifted to the sky. The harbor master raises his staff in salute. Children wave until their arms ache. The captain stands high at the stern, one hand on the tiller, his face unreadable but intent. Behind him the clerk checks his lists one last time, then tucks the wax tablet away. With the tide's turn and a freshening breeze, the cog slides clear of the dock. Oars dip to push her past the shallows until the sail fills with a long, satisfying sigh. Slowly, gracefully, she turns toward open water. The village grows small behind her. The lighthouse to the north stands pale and still against the morning sky. Ahead lies only the shimmering horizon and the promise of far-off harbors, strange markets, and uncertain seas. For those left behind, there is a moment of silence as the ship becomes a dark silhouette against the brightening east. Some wipe eyes quickly, others clasp hands and turn back to their work. For the sailors aboard, the land shrinks to a thin line and then is gone. All that remains is the steady creak of timbers, the slap of water on hull, and the endless breathing of the sea, a world of risk, wealth, and wonder awaiting just beyond sight. Before roads were safe, before bridges spanned every stream, the river was the oldest and often easiest road of all. A boat could carry more than any cart, glide where wheels sank, and link faraway towns with slow, dependable strength. In the Middle Ages, rivers were living highways, broad brown arteries of trade and travel, where barges, rafts, and ferries moved silently under sky and willow. A river morning began with mist. Fishermen pushed off in narrow skiffs. Boatmen checked ropes and poles, shouting across water muffled by fog. At quays, merchants bustled, barrels rolled, bales hoisted, ox carts creaked to edge of wharf. Monks from Riverside Abbey blessed a departing vessel or collected tolls. The water smelled of mud and green reeds, and beyond the bend someone's hammer rang where shipwrights mended hulls. Boats came in many shapes. Flat-bottomed barges hauled grain, salt, wool, or stone, easy to pole in shallow channels. Keelboats with simple sails carried heavier cargo down wide rivers. Rafts of logs floated from forest to sawmill, steered by long sweeps. Small passenger ferries darted back and forth where bridges lacked. In some towns, stately merchant cogs or hulks anchored, unloading exotic wares. Propulsion was humble. Where current ran strong, boatmen used poles, setting them to riverbed and walking them along deck in patient rhythm. Upstream was hardest. Men hauled with tow ropes from path along bank, straining like oxes. Sometimes horses or even teams of men pulled whole barges step by muddy step. Downstream travel felt gift. Current carried vessel while steersmen merely guided. Trade thrived on water. Grain from inland farms, millstones quarried up river, cloth from looms, fish both fresh and salted, wine from sunny vineyards, all floated to cities and seaports. Heavy stone for cathedrals moved this way, easier than overland. Tolls lined route bridges, lords' castles or monastic houses exacted coin or a portion of goods for safe passage. Flags or painted shields on boat signaled merchants' guild or lords' protection. Life aboard was simple. Crew cooked in iron pots, slept under rough awnings or in small cabins if lucky. Days measured by bends and landmarks. An oak grove, a chapel spire, a wayside inn where boaters drank and swapped news. Rain soaked everything. Sun baked decks dry again. Boots stayed muddy, hands rope burned, yet work gave freedom and modest pay. The river had moods. In spring it swelled with meltwater, swift and dangerous. In summer it lay low and gentle, sometimes too shallow for full loads. Autumn brought fog and busy traffic before winter. Winter iced edges or froze channels, halting trade. Floods could sweep away ferries, drown cattle, and cut villages off for weeks. Every boatman read sky and current like scripture. Villages and towns faced river, thriving on its gifts. Mills turned wheels where channels diverted water. Washerwomen beat linen on stones. Tanners soaked hides. Children fished with string and stick. Geese waddled among reeds. Ferries rang with laughter or caution as animals and carts balanced aboard. Market days saw docks alive with shouting, counting, and bargaining as cargo shifted from boat to street. Spiritual life clung to banks. Chapels stood by fords and bridges where travelers prayed before crossing. Processions blessed river at Epiphany. Saints' statues faced water, guarding against flood. Pilgrims sometimes floated part of their way to shrines, singing psalms. Boatmen called on St. Nicholas for protection, his image often carved into prow. Dangers lurked, shifting sandbars, sudden storms, pirates or robbers from dense woods. Some lords kept armed patrol boats, merchants sometimes hired guards. But most days passed in steady peace. Creak of timber, splash of pole, call of heron. At night boats moored at safe bank or dock. Fires burned in braziers, crew cooked supper, bread, fish, ale if coin allowed. Town lights flickered across water, frogs and night birds sang. Sometimes music drifted from riverside alehouse, mingling with gentle lap of waves. Sleep came under canvas with smell of wet rope and tar, stars peeking when clouds parted. Festivals lit the river too. St. John's Eve saw bonfires along banks. Harvest fairs crowded quays with music and lanterns. Nobles staged pageants on water, barges draped with cloth, torches blazing, minstrels playing as crowds cheered. Even humble boatmen paused to watch, pride swelling that their highway carried such wonder. For many, river travel meant possibility. A poor youth might sign on with barge master and see towns beyond imagining. A merchant might send first cargo and dream of wealth. A pilgrim might float halfway to holy site, saving weary feet. Water tied lives together, letting a distant abbey taste coastal salt, or inland craftsmen wear silk from far east. So when imagining medieval journeys, do not picture only dusty roads. See also these slow, strong river journeys, barges poling under willows, rafts sliding past abbeys, ferries busy with gossip and carts. Rivers were the quiet highways of their world, carrying bread and stone, prayers and songs, strangers and friends, shaping the Middle Ages one patient mile at a time. Where the great trade road bends between meadow and wood, a small stone shrine keeps silent watch. Travelers pass it every day, merchants with wagons, peasants on foot, pilgrims with staves, riders in hurry, and those who have nowhere urgent to go. It is simple, a single arch of fieldstone, roofed in slate, with a wooden figure inside, part saint, part old guardian of the way. Beside it stands a bench worn smooth, and before it a flat stone where offerings gather. At dawn the shrine is wrapped in mist, dew beads the low roof and silver threads the grass. Birds call softly in the hedgerow, and the road lies quiet except for one man, an old carter named Hugo, leading his single mule. He stops, as he always does, and sets down his load. From his pouch he takes a crust of bread and lays it on the stone. He bows his head, murmuring thanks for another safe night and strength for the miles ahead. The mule flicks its ears and noses the grass. The shrine's guardian figure is carved of oak, darkened by rain and sun. It is hard to tell if it shows a saint, a shepherd, or a traveler with staff and bundle. Perhaps it has been all of these in turn. Its face is simple but kind, its hands lifted in blessing. Around its neck hangs a string of tokens left by passing folk, beads, brass rings, little bells, bits of colored cloth. At its feet lie pebbles, coins, dried flowers, and scraps of written prayers weighted with stones. By mid-morning the mist has lifted and the road begins to stir, A pair of pilgrims appear, walking slowly, staffs tapping the dust. They wear patched cloaks and carry small packs. One limps, the other steadies him. They pause at the shrine, bow deeply, and light a stub of candle, shielding the flame with cupped hands against the breeze. They sit on the bench to rest, sharing dried fruit, quiet in their tiredness but comforted by the little altar's presence. Soon a merchant wagon rattles up, driver and guard beside him. They stop, not long time as coin, but the merchant drops a copper on the stone, and the guard traces a quick sign of blessing before moving on. Dust settles in their wake. The shrine keeps its calm, unconcerned with how brief or deep each visit is. A young mother passes, carrying her baby in a sling and leading a small goat. She kneels briefly, whispers a prayer for safe passage and milk enough for the child. She leaves a sprig of rosemary tucked at the figure's feet. Then she moves on, her goat stepping patiently, the baby watching wide-eyed as light plays through the trees. Toward noon, the sun grows warm. A tinker with jingling pans arrives and decides to rest. He props his pack on the bench and eats cheese and bread. After a while, he takes a small bent spoon from his pouch and places it by the shrine, payment of gratitude perhaps, or hope for better trade. He hums an old tune as he goes, the sound fading down the road. The shrine sees many small dramas. Once a young man running from sorrow stops and kneels long, tears dropping onto the dust. Another time a bridal party passes, bright with ribbons and song. They stop laughing long enough to lay flowers and pray for good harvest and healthy children. On feast days, villagers come in small groups, sweeping the place, wreathing the figure in new green. This day, as the heat peaks, a wagon train comes slowly from the west. Merchants, guards, and a cook fire smell riding on the breeze. They halt to water their animals at the brook nearby. Some wander to the shrine, one guard lighting a taper for his sister far away, a cook leaving a coin from her small purse, a boy placing a stone just because he feels he should. No one lingers long, but their offerings join the quiet growing collection. In the afternoon, a storm gathers. Clouds boil up behind the hills, and the air thickens with the scent of rain. A lone rider gallops up and reins in sharply. He is soaked in sweat, his horse lathered. He dismounts, breathing hard, and kneels only a moment, touching his forehead to the stone. Then he mounts and is gone, lost to the rising wind. The shrine keeps his haste, like a breath held and released. When rain comes, it comes fast. Sheets of water blur the road, drumming on the slate roof. The shrine, snug beneath its arch, stands dry. A group of peasants huddles there, cloaks pulled tight. They laugh nervously, surprised by the downpour, and share a hunk of bread. A boy peers at the wooden figure and whispers a story about it, walking the road at night to chase away wolves. The others smile, letting him believe. After the storm, the air clears to a bright, rinsed world, leaves glitter, and the brook sings louder. Travelers shake out cloaks and move on. The shrine drips quietly, offerings washed fresh. A rainbow arches above for a breath-long time, and then the road returns to its soft, murmuring life. Toward evening, when shadows lengthen, a peddler comes with his small cart. He sets down a bundle and begins to sweep the wet leaves from the shrine's base. He is his hired. It is simply his habit when he passes. He straightens the offerings, tucks wilted flowers to the side, and lights a fresh candle. Then he sits on the bench to eat a little supper and watch the first stars prick the sky. As dusk deepens, more passers-by arrive. 2 shepherd boys driving sheep home from Maplin pastures stop to rest. One dares to pluck the shrine's bell and lets it chime softly before the other shushes him. A merchant couple lights a taper for safe travel tomorrow. A farmer leading an ox cart pauses to stretch his back, nodding respectfully to the wooden figure. When the light is nearly gone, an old woman with a pack arrives from the east. She moves slowly, leaning on a staff, but her eyes are bright. She kneels a long time, lips moving in prayer. Then she takes from her pouch a tiny loaf of bread, no bigger than a fist, and sets it before the shrine. She touches the carved hand and smiles as if greeting an old friend, before settling to sleep on the bench under her cloak. The shrine keeps watch over her. Night gathers gently, fireflies drift in the hedgerow, an owl calls from the wood. The road quiets to almost nothing but the sigh of wind. The shrine stands, dark but not forgotten, candlelight flickering on the wooden face. Each small gift glows faintly, copper coins, pine cones, herbs, stones. The smell of wet earth and smoke from distant hearths hangs in the air. Far off, the bell tower of a town rings curfew. The sound carries softly across fields and hedges. The woman on the bench stirs but does not wake. Her sleep is easy here. The road itself seems to rest. Horses in far stables snort and settle. Carts stand silent under sheds, and the mountains beyond grow black against the stars. The shrine asks for nothing, yet gives a quiet strength. It is a pause in the long miles, a reminder that one is alone on the road. Travelers leave what they care, bread, coin, prayer, or only a breath. In return, they carry away a sense of blessing, small but real. By midnight, the candle gutters and dies, but the wooden face remains serene. Mist begins to gather again in the low hollows, silvering the stones. Somewhere beyond, another traveler is making his way, guided by moonlight, tired but hopeful. When he comes upon this place, he will find it waiting as it has for generations. A small roof, a quiet bench, and a carved guardian ready to listen. The sea is never silent. Even on the gentlest of mornings it sighs low and endless against the rocks. But there are days when its voice changes, when the familiar rhythm is broken and the wind comes down like a warning from the far horizon. Such a day begins quietly in the little coastal hamlet, with a pale sky and a thin line of clouds out beyond the bay. Few notice at first. Nets are mended, boats rock gently at their moorings, gulls cry and wheel in lazy spirals, yet somewhere a fisherman glances to the east and frowns. The tide runs stronger than usual. Waves slap more sharply against the stone quay, and ropes creak as if unsettled. The air grows heavy with the scent of salt and coming rain. A dog barks once and slinks back toward the cottages. Still, work goes on. Fish are gutted and salted, barrels rolled from shed to shed, sails checked for fraying. Only the oldest among them pause to scan the horizon, where the faint clouds thicken and darken, piling higher and higher. By midday the wind has changed. It rushes in from the open water with a restless moan, tugging at cloaks and sending loose thatch rustling. The sea takes on a strange green cast, and the horizon is no longer clean, but smeared with a bruised purple-gray. Children who know the signs by instinct, if not by name, hurry home at their mother's calls. Fishermen work faster, pulling their boats further up the beach or securing them with heavy stones. Some younger men still hesitate, hoping for one last good haul, but the older ones shake their heads sharply. No catch is worth a storm. The first rain comes suddenly. A fine mist swept sideways on the rising wind. It beads on wool cloaks and soaks the nets left too long on the sand. Out beyond the harbor, waves grow teeth, curling and snapping white. The boats that ventured too far are seen pulling hard for home now, sails down, oars flashing in the dark water. On shore, villagers wade in to help, gripping hulls and dragging them onto safer ground as the surf begins to snarl. Shouted warnings are half lost to the roar of the growing gale. A bell rings from the small chapel above the shore, 3 slow peals, the sign to seek shelter. Doors slam as families gather inside their homes, shuttering windows and piling sandbags where the sea sometimes creeps in. Smoke from hearths is whipped away in ragged trails. In the tavern at the center of the village, men arrive soaked and panting, shaking off rain while they share quick words about boats and gear. Candles are lit, though it is barely afternoon, their flames trembling in the draught. Outside, the wind builds until it howls through every gap in wood and stone. The sea is a living force now, hurling itself against the breakwater with thunderous crashes. Spray leaps high, drenching anyone foolish enough to linger near the edge. A skiff, forgotten or too heavy to pull high enough, is lifted and dashed against the rocks like a toy. The sky is nearly black, shot through with flashes of lightning that illuminate the frantic dance of foam and rain. Thunder rolls so low and deep It seems to shake the very ground. Yet in the heart of the storm there is strange beauty. The waves rear like dark horses, manes of white spray flying, then plunge with a roar that fills the air and drowns all thought. Seabirds wheel desperately, their cries ripped away by the gale. The smell is salt and ozone, sharp and alive. For those safe behind shutters, it is a fearful wonder, the might of the ocean unleashed, reminding every soul how small a village is beside it. Inside the homes, life draws close and quiet. Fires are stoked high. Stew simmers though no one is hungry. Children huddle under blankets while parents murmur stories of past storms, ships broken and foundered, miraculous returns, the chapel bell that once rang for 3 days to call lost sailors home. Some pray softly, others simply listen to the pounding of rain on the roof, the whistling gaps in the shutters, the distant thunder. In the harbor master's house, maps are weighed down with stones against the drafts. He and his sons watch the quayside through a small window, lantern light catching their anxious faces. A few men remain outside, braving the storm to secure lines and barrels, their cloaks plastered to their backs. Each time lightning cracks, the world becomes bright as day for a heartbeat, the leaping spray, the pitched boats, the white blur of rain all revealed. Then darkness slams back like a door. Hours pass. The tide climbs to its highest mark, licking at the edges of the road where seaweed now twists and clings. Some waves crash far enough to send water coursing between the cottages nearest the shore. But the buildings have stood here for generations, and they hold firm, their stones slick but steadfast. At last, almost imperceptibly, the rage begins to break. The thunder rolls farther out to sea, the lightning grows faint. The rain softens to a steady downpour rather than a lash. The wind still moans, but less savagely. Doors crack open one by one. Careful faces peer into the wet dusk. The sky is still dark, but the deepest heart of the storm has passed. Men hurry to check boats, shouting to each other when one is found adrift or damaged. Some rejoice to see their craft intact. Others mourn quietly for splintered hulls and lost nets. The ground is littered with kelp and driftwood. The air smells of wet earth and salt, but also of survival, the fierce, relieved breath of a village spared. Night comes as the last rain drips from the eaves. The sea is still restless, throwing pale foam onto the rocks, but its roar has softened to a steady growl. In homes across the village, fires burn low and warm, drying soaked clothes and hearts alike. Supper is eaten late but gratefully. Children fall asleep, listening to the diminished wind. Outside, lanterns glow faintly along the quay, casting trembling light across puddles that reflect the calming sky. Long after most have gone to bed, a few figures remain by the shore, the harbor master, an old fisherman, a pair of young men silent in the night. They watch the last ragged clouds drift away and the stars reappear, sharp and cold above the Black Sea. The storm has passed, leaving the world rinsed and humbled. Tomorrow there will be work, repairs, drying nets, mending hulls, but for now there is only the quiet breathing of the tide and the deep, enduring presence of the sea. Night is falling on the long medieval road. The ruts of the day have turned to shadowed grooves, hedgerows blur into dark shapes, and the air cools with the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. A weary traveler, cloak dusty and feet sore, lifts his eyes in relief when he spots the faint glow ahead, a lantern swinging above a timbered doorway. Its signboard creaks in the wind. A painted stag, a tankard, perhaps a cross to promise safety. This is the Roadside Inn, humble but vital, offering food, warmth, and company to all who pass. In a world without railways or safe night travel, the inn is sanctuary. Merchants, pilgrims, messengers, minstrels, and wandering craftsmen all depend on these scattered havens. Some are simple alehouses with sleeping loft, others larger complexes with courtyard, stables, and cookshop. Many cling to crossroads or bridges where travelers naturally pause. Lords may license them, monasteries may own them, or families run them for generations, each adding small improvements as years pass. Arriving at an inn is a ritual. First, the smell, wood smoke, roasting meat, warm ale, then sounds, horses snorting in yard, a smith perhaps hammering quick repair, laughter and clatter from the hall. Inside is firelight and bustle. A host greets newcomers, sometimes with wary eye. Travelers bring custom but also trouble. Guards or servants lead beasts to stable, rubbing them down, feeding hay. Saddlebags and chests are carried in, often watched closely lest hands grow light. The common room is heart of the inn. Long trusted tables stretch before great hearth where logs roar and spit. Benches line walls. Above, rafters glow with soot and hang with herbs or drying game. The air smells of stew, onions, barley, perhaps hare or chicken, and fresh bread. Tankards thump, dice clatter, travelers trade tales. Some drink quietly, others sing or gamble. A minstrel might strum lute, a juggler entertain children. Smoke curls to rafters as oil lamps sway. Food is simple but hearty, pottage thick with vegetables and scraps of meat, fresh coarse bread, cheese, dried fruit, sometimes roasted fowl if trade is good. Ale is plentiful, wine if region permits, or a merchant has brought some. Guests sit where space allows, rubbing elbows with strangers of every kind. A cloaked pilgrim beside burly carter, a merchant beside wandering friar. Stories spill like wine, news of markets, warnings of bandits, gossip of lords and wars. Lodging varies with coin. The poorest sleep on straw in common hall, cloaks for blankets, boots under head to guard them. Better pay earns space in shared chamber with pallets and coarse linens. Wealthy merchants or minor nobles may take private room with bed, lock, and chest. Even these are modest by modern eyes, drafty timbers, simple rushlight, but privacy rare on the road. Cleanliness is a battle. Inns sweep floors and change straw, but flea and mice persist. Water for washing may be offered in basin at door. Some keep small tubs for a fee, yet after a long road even coarse straw feels heaven, and a warm meal outweighs pests. Travelers accept this with weary shrug. The road is harder still. Stables hum with life. Grooms tend horses and oxen, brushing dust, checking hooves, feeding hay and oats. Wagons creak into yard. Smiths nail quick shoes or fix wheels. Dogs sleep curled near mangers. Cats hunt mice in feed bins. A good inn keeps beasts safe. A poor one earns curses if animals are found hungry or lame next morning. Merchants judge inns by their care of horses as much as food. The inn is also exchange of news. Messengers rest and share tidings of distant towns. Pilgrims swap miracle tales and shrine rumors. Merchants quietly ask about tolls, safe passes, grain prices. Minstrels gather fresh songs. Soldiers warn of unrest. A single night here may teach more than months of rumor at home. Even lords value such listening posts, sending men to drink and learn. Entertainment fills long evenings. Someone may recite ballads, another tell ghost stories while fire flickers. Dice games and cards clack. Children play in corners until sleep claims them. Sometimes a traveling theater troupe sets small stage, or a puppet show delights. Ale flows, voices rise, quarrels break out and are calmed by stern host or burly guard. The common room is equalizer. Knight and beggar both seek warmth here. Religion touches the inn in quiet ways. A cross or saint's image often hangs near door. Some inns keep small shrine where guests may pray for safe journey. On feast eves a priest might bless travelers. On Sundays inn may empty as all walk to parish church. Pilgrims especially treat inn as halfway holy ground, a pause before shrine, a place to wash, pray, and share intention. Business hums beneath merriment. Hosts keep careful books, charges for bed, meal, stabling, extra firewood, even candle use. Tolls and taxes may be collected here by lord's men. Merchants trade samples, strike deals, or hire guards for next leg. Some inns function as informal banks, holding coin or goods for trusted travelers. Gossip itself is currency. A wise host listens and trades news subtly. Danger lurks too. Not every guest is honest. Cut purses work crowded benches. Drunken quarrels flare into knife fights. A corrupt host might signal bandits after rich train leaves. Wise travelers sleep lightly and secure goods. Still, most inns protect their reputation fiercely. Repeat trade is life, and robbery scares custom away. Many keep a big dog or armed ostler for safety. Seasons shape the inn's mood. In summer, yards busted with dusty caravans, travelers spilling onto benches outside, children playing in warm dusk. Autumn sees harvest wagons, markets and fairs, rooms filled to rafters. Winter transforms inn into refuge, snow outside, hearth roaring, cloaks steaming by fire, travelers grateful to be alive. Spring brings pilgrims and wandering minstrels, laughter and new gossip. Each season adds its own scent, hay and apples, wet wool and smoke, pine boughs at Christmas. Hosts and hostesses often become local legends. A cheerful widow who keeps table groaning with stew, a gruff man with heart of gold who shelters penniless pilgrims, a shrewd couple known for fair prices and fierce protection. Children grow up under rafters, learning tongues of many lands. Some inns last generations, names unchanged while kings rise and fall. Late at night, when fires sink low and only embers glow, the common room grows still. Snows rumble from pallets, horses shift in stable, a lonely guard peers into dark road. Somewhere a minstrel's song fades to silence. The inn exhales, its work done, heaven given, bellies filled, weary souls restored for tomorrow's miles. Though chronicles sing of knights and castles, without the humble roadside inn travel would falter. Merchants would risk hunger and theft, pilgrims might perish, news would flow slower. Each timbered hall, smoky and bustling, is a small light against vast darkness, a bridge between unknown towns. So when you imagine the medieval road, picture this: a lantern swaying in dusk, laughter spilling through door, horses stamping in lamplight. Inside, strangers share stew and stories, safe for one night beneath a roof built by hope and hospitality. The roadside inn is the warm, beating heart of every journey. Before dawn has fully lifted, while most of the town still sleeps, a single rider moves through the quiet streets. His name is Lucien, and he rides for the post, one of the king's swift couriers who carry letters, news, and small packets between distant towns. His horse is lean and strong, built for distance rather than show. The leather satchel at his side holds the day's dispatches, sealed letters, merchant accounts, writs from officials, and notes of love or grief. The air is cool and smells of damp stone and bread rising in unseen ovens. Lucien wears a plain but sturdy cloak, its hem dust dark, and high boots splashed with yesterday's miles. At his belt hangs a short dagger for defense, though his true safety is his speed and the respect given to riders of the post. His badge, a small silver token stamped with a crowned heart, glints faintly in lantern light. He stops briefly at the postmaster's house near the east gate. The door creaks open, and the postmaster, a stooped man with the nightcap still on, hands him the last packet, a sealed letter bearing an urgent mark. Lucien tucks it carefully into his satchel, nods thanks, and swings back into the saddle. The gate watch waves him through. Even at this hour, a courier is known and rarely delayed. Outside the walls, the road lies pale under the first grey light. Fields stretch damp and quiet, touched by fog. Lucian urges his horse into a brisk trot, then a steady canter, setting the pace he can hold for hours. His work is not to sprint, but to endure, to cross miles swiftly without breaking horse or man. Hooves thud softly on packed earth, rhythm joining the distant calls of waking birds. As the sky lightens, farms begin their day. A shepherd lifts a hand in greeting from a hedge. A baker's boy waves from a cottage door. Lucien nods but does not slow. His mind is on the road, its turns, its muddy places, the fords where water might be high after last night's rain. He carries no map. The way is written in muscle and memory. By mid-morning, the first relay post comes into view, a low stone stable and a bell hanging on a post. Here fresh horses wait for riders on long runs. Lucien dismounts, rubs his mount's neck, and hands her to the groom with quiet praise. He takes a new horse, lean and bright-eyed, already saddled. A quick drink of water, a bite of oat bread, and he is off again. The change smooth and swift. This next stretch climbs into low hills. The road grows rougher, scattered with loose stones. Lucien slows to a canter, saving his horse's legs. The wind is cool and carries scents of pine and distant smoke. Now and then he overtakes slower travelers, a tinker with clattering wares, a farmer driving pigs, a pair of monks on foot. Each steps aside for the rider of the post, offering a nod or blessing. Lucien answers with a lifted hand, but keeps his speed. Near noon he stops briefly at a wayside shrine. Not for long the post waits, but long enough to splash his face with cool spring water and whisper a simple prayer for safe miles. He leaves a small coin on the stone ledge and remounts. The road ahead twists through forest, and he likes to ride with a quiet sense of luck. The forest stretch is dim and fragrant, filled with birdsong and the rustle of unseen animals. Sunlight filters through leaves in shifting coins of gold. Here Lucien is alert. Bandits sometimes prowl these woods, though less so since riders and merchants began traveling with guarded trains. Still, a lone courier is a tempting sight. His horse moves quietly but ready. His eyes scan every bend. He meets no trouble today. Only a woodcutter with an ox cart greets him, and two children gathering kindling wave shyly. Soon the trees thin and the road breaks into opened upland. The sky is wide and bright. The air smells of heather and far-off rain. Lucien loosens his cloak, feeling the sun warm his back. The miles fall away beneath steady hooves. Mid-afternoon brings the second relay. This one is a bustling yard near a small market town. Boys run to take his tired horse. A girl brings fresh water. A clerk notes his passing in a ledger. Lucian stretches, eats a heel of bread and cheese, and drinks ale handed by a smiling innwife. The stop is brief, 10 minutes perhaps, but enough to refresh man and beast. Soon he is off again on a new horse, this one black with a white blaze and eager for the run. The road now skirts marshland, frogs croak in hidden pools, reeds whisper in the breeze, wooden causeways keep travelers dry, though some boards creak ominously under hooves. Lucian trusts his mount and keeps a steady pace. He thinks of the letters in his satchel, some joyful, some grim. He never reads them. A rider's honor forbids it, but he feels their weight nonetheless. Evening nears as the land rises once more toward low mountains. Shadows lengthen and the air grows cooler. Lucian pushes on. The day's goal is the mountain relay house where he can rest. His body aches from hours in the saddle, but he rides with practiced patience. Every clink of harness, every creak of leather is familiar. He passes a slow caravan of merchants and calls a brief warning before galloping by. They wave, one calls good luck. A pair of shepherds drives sheep aside to let him through. All know the male rider's work touches theirs. Contracts signed, news of prices, letters to distant kin. His speed knits the wide land together. At last the relay house comes into view, a stout stone building with smoke curling from its chimney and a lantern hung high. Dogs bark as he approaches. A stable hand runs out to take his horse. Lucian swings stiffly down, pats the horse's neck, and hands over the reins. Inside, warmth and welcome. A fire, bread and stew, a bunk for the night. Other riders sit at the long table, eating and trading quiet road news. He reports his route to the master of posts. No bandits seen, bridge at Miller's Ford safe, road firm though muddy in the low meadows. The master nods and notes it in a great ledger. Tomorrow another rider will take these letters farther, or Lucian himself will press on with fresh horses. Tonight he is free to rest. He eats well, savoring hot broth and crusty bread. His body hums with fatigue but also quiet pride. Few notice the riders of the post. They slip between towns like the wind. But without them the kingdom would slow, news would falter, trade would stumble, letters of love would linger too long. Lucian knows this, and it is enough. After supper he tends his gear, brushes dust from boots, checks saddle straps, oils the leather of his satchel. He runs fingers over the sealed packets, counting each one carefully. Tomorrow they will be on their way again, flying over miles like thoughts made flesh. When at last he lies on his narrow bunk, the sounds of the relay house soothe him. Horses shifting in stalls, Low talk among other riders, the pop of fire. Outside, the road lies quiet under stars, but it will not stay so. Couriers will ride it before dawn. Lucien sleeps easily, tired but content, knowing he is part of that ceaseless, invisible river of messages. Far away, someone waits for news, a merchant for prices, a wife for word of a traveling husband, a lord for royal command. They do not know his name, but his miles bring their world closer. He rides for them, for all who live between towns and need their voices carried. The night deepens. Horses snort softly, shifting in their stalls. A bell somewhere far off tolls the hour. The road stretches on, patient and silent, ready for tomorrow's hooves. Lucien dreams of wind on his face, the endless horizon, and the small but vital duty that will call him again with the first pale light. Where the trade road slips into low hills and scattered woods, travelers often make camp. There is no inn for miles, only a clearing known by those who wander, a flat circle of earth ringed by oaks, with a stone fire pit at its heart. The stones are blackened by countless nights of smoke and flame. Here, strangers become neighbors for a few quiet hours, sharing warmth, food, and stories before the road calls them on. At sunset, a single traveler arrives first. She is a wool merchant named Isolde, leading a patient gray mule. She has walked since dawn and is glad to stop. Her boots are dusted pale, her cloak damp with sweat, but her face holds calm determination. She unslings her pack, gathers fallen wood, and coaxes a small fire to life with practiced hands. Sparks rise, the clearing glows softly as the sky deepens to violet. Soon a second wanderer comes, a young man named Perrin, traveling home from the fair. He leads a thin dog and carries a lute on his back. He greets Isolde with a cautious smile and asks if he might share the fire. She nods. Strangers here know the silent rules. Bring wood, offer food if you can, harm no one. Perrin lays down his bundle, helps fetch more sticks, and sets a kettle of water to heat. While they work, another pair appears from the dusk, a carter and his wife driving a small wagon piled with sacks. They have no need of lodging, they carry their own shelter, but a warm fire draws them in. The wife unpacks bread and a wheel of cheese. The man tends his horse. Greetings are brief but kind. The clearing fills with the simple sounds of camp. Snapping twigs, quiet voices, the hiss of water about to boil. As the fire brightens, so does fellowship. Will stirs a pot of barley and beans, sharing a little salt pork from her stores. Perrin adds dried herbs from a pouch. The carter's wife contributes onions and a splash of ale. Soon a pot of stew bubbles fragrant and filling. Each traveler keeps their own cup or bowl, but ladles freely for others. Steam carries the scent of comfort into the cool night air. More footsteps come from the road. A pair of pilgrims with staves and scallop shells at their caps approach shyly. One has a limp, the other supports him. The travelers wave them in without question. Soon the pilgrims are seated, warming hands and murmuring thanks. One produces a small flask of wine. Perrin strums his lute softly while they eat. The darkness deepens. The clearing fills with gentle light and easy voices. Stories begin as they always do. Perrin sings a ballad learned at the fair, a tale of lost love and found home. Isel tells of sheep markets and winter roads. The carter shares news of grain prices and a bridge washed out far to the west. The pilgrims speak of the long miles behind and ahead, of shrines visited, of quiet prayers. Each tale is simple but shared with warmth. The night air smells of wood smoke and stew, of damp earth and cooling iron from the wagon's wheels. Above, stars sharpen in a sky scrubbed clear by day's breeze. Owls call from the woods. Firelight dances on the circle of faces, some weathered, some young, all weary but peaceful. The rules of the road hold. No boasting, no harm, no theft. Here everyone is simply a soul between places. After supper, Perrin plays again, a lighter tune now, sprightly and hopeful. The carter taps his knee to the rhythm, the pilgrims smile and hum along. Isolde mend a small tear in her pack by firelight, content. Conversation drifts to memories of other roads, dangerous passes, generous strangers, a night caught in storm. The common thread is always survival and kindness found unexpectedly. One by one they prepare for sleep. Isolde rolls her cloak near the fire. Perrin rigs a small lean-to with his lute case tucked safe. The carter and his wife sleep in their wagon, horse tethered nearby. The pilgrims spread cloaks and whisper prayers. Someone adds last wood to the fire so embers will last till dawn. Its glow warms the circle as night settles fully. Silence comes but for the fire's soft cracker and night sounds beyond, crickets, a fox's bark, distant river sigh. Stars wheel above the clearing, bright and cold. A breeze stirs the oaks, scattering a few leaves to dance in the light. The travelers sleep lightly but with trust. This place is known as safe ground, protected by its long tradition. Near midnight, Isolde wakes briefly. She checks the mule, adds a stick to the fire, and looks around at the sleeping shapes. In the glow, she feels a quiet gratitude, alone on the road, one to be vulnerable. But here, tonight, strangers have become something gentler. She lies down again and sleeps. Before dawn, the fire is mostly embers, but one pilgrim rises to pray. He faces east, whispering words lost to the cool breeze, then adds a twig to the coals, so smoke will greet the coming sun. Soon Isolde stirs, then Perrin, then the carter and his wife. quiet morning movements replace the hush, rolling cloaks, fastening packs, rubbing eyes. No one lingers long. The road is patient but waiting. Breakfast is simple, and shared crusts of bread dipped in last night's broth, dried fruit passed hand to hand, a swallow of wine for warmth. Perrin plays a brief waking tune on the lute, light and hopeful. Smiles pass among them, not grand but real. They depart in small waves. The pilgrims take the east road, staffs tapping softly. The carter clucks to his horse and rolls south, his wife waving from the wagon seat. Perrin heads west with his dog trotting ahead, humming as he goes. Isolde stays a moment longer, scattering ashes, covering the fire pit stones, and checking the clearing for stray scraps, another wayfarer's kindness for those who will come next. When she finally leads her mule onward, the clearing is empty but not lonely. The scent of smoke lingers, and the earth is warm where the fire burned. Birds begin to sing as the first gold light spills through the oaks. By noon, new travelers may arrive, tired and hungry, and find the place ready. Stones set, space clear, a silent invitation to safety. The road rolls on, long and uncertain, but here it offers this small mercy, a circle of stones, a fire's memory, and the knowledge that strangers can be gentle for one night beneath the same stars. The sea by night is a living darkness. From the cliffs above it stretches without end, a restless plain of black glass and broken silver where moonlight strikes the waves. No road marks its breadth, no lantern shows its safe path. Only sound and smell tell a mariner where he is. The hiss of water against rock, the salt thick wind, the long boom of surf far below. In such a world, one small light can mean the difference between safe harbor and ruin. On a lonely headland of worn grey stone, the lighthouse stands watch. It is a squat, round tower built of heavy blocks to withstand the winter storms. Its base clings to the cliff like a limpet. Its upper windows look out to every horizon. By day, it seems part of the landscape, weathered and mute, gulls nesting along its ledges. But by night, when its fire is kindled, it becomes the beating heart of the coast, a beacon that mariners seek as a pilgrim seek a shrine. Inside, the keeper climbs narrow spiral stairs, worn smooth by generations of feet. A lantern swings from his hand, throwing long shadows over the damp stones. Above, the great brazier awaits, an iron basket ready to hold the roaring fire. A boy follows, carrying an armful of split driftwood. The air smells of salt and smoke, of tar and old rope. At the top, the keeper sets down his lantern and strikes flint to steel. Sparks leap, the first kindling catches. Soon the brazier glows red, then orange, then bursts into a steady yellow flame. The light pours through narrow windows, glinting on the wet rocks below and sweeping far out across the dark water. Ships miles away will see it, a warm, human glow in a cold void. Tonight the wind is strong but steady, the sky clear except for low clouds that race past the moon. The keeper adjusts the fire, adding more wood and a scoop of pitch to make it burn brighter and longer. His young helper lingers at the window, marveling at the expanse of night sea flecked with silver. Down below, the small watch house is alive with quiet work. Other members of the night watch, men chosen for their steady hands and clear eyes, keep record of the tides, mend ropes, and keep a great iron bell ready should warning need to be given. A table holds a chart of the coast, marked with rocks, sandbars, and channels. On a bench near the hearth, an older sailor tells of wrecks long past, a merchant ship that ran aground before this tower was built, a fishing boat lost in a fog that swallowed even sound. The younger men listen, glancing now and again to the door where the wind hums. Outside, the world is nothing but wind and wave. The path to the lighthouse is a narrow ribbon of stone steps cut into the cliff face. Each is slick with sea spray. The rail, made of old ship's rope, sways slightly, but the watch walk it with quiet surety, lanterns held low to block the gusts. They check the anchors that hold the fog bell, the chains that secure the signal fires, the small shrine to St. Nicholas built into a rock cleft. A carved figure there holds a ship in one hand, his face kindly in the flickering lantern glow. Each man touches the stone in passing. At intervals they pause to look seaward. Out there, faint pinpricks of light move against the void, fishing boats returning late, a merchant cog hugging the coast, perhaps even a distant galley bound for another port. Each light is precious. Each life depends on unseen hands here on the cliff. The watchmen murmur to one another, noting bearings and tides, so that if any lantern vanishes or seems lost, they can ring the bell or set a second beacon to guide it home. Midnight comes with a slow toll from the small bell within the tower. The keeper adds more pitch to the fire, sending a brighter flame roaring into the night. The boy stirs, fighting sleep. Down in the watch house, tea brewed from dried herbs is passed around, fragrant and bitter, warming hands numb from the wind. Conversation fades to murmurs. The sea itself becomes the loudest voice, deep, patient, eternal. Sometimes the night is uneventful, just black water, cold stars, the slow turning of the tide. But sometimes, like tonight, the weather shifts. A thin fog drifts in from the sea, ghost-like swallowing stars and softening the moon. Lights from ships grow dim and waver. The watch responds quietly but swiftly. The keeper throws damp moss and oil onto the fire to make it smoke more brightly. Men below strike the great warning bell, slow and deep, to carry through the mist. Its sound rolls out like a summons, telling sailors where safety lies. On the water, faint shouts answer, distant but real. The watchmen lean out into the cold, listening. Somewhere a ship moves cautiously closer, its small light bobbing like a firefly. Another watchman hauls on a rope to swing a lantern along the cliff edge, marking safe passage past hidden rocks. The boy, eyes wide, clings to the stair rail as the keeper works the fire higher. Together, they become a lifeline in the darkness, their actions quiet but vital. Hours pass. The fog drifts inland and thin stars return one by one. The sea calms to a low hush. Out on the horizon, lights move steadily and safely, each ship finding its way along the coast. The keeper at last eases the fire, letting it burn low but steady until dawn. The boy, exhausted, curls on a bench and sleeps while the older men sit in silence, drinking the last of the tea and watching the black water turn silver gray. When the first pale light touches the sky, the watch ends. The keeper stretches, bones creaking. The men coil ropes and close the shutters around the brazier to shield it from the coming day. Down the steps they go, past the saint's shrine, where one by one they pause to touch the stone again. The village below still sleeps, roofs shining wet from the night mist. Only the sea remains wakeful, endless and patient. As the sun climbs, the lighthouse falls silent once more, a dark tower against the brightening sky. But every sailor passing knows the light will return with the night, faithful as breath. And in every home along the coast, families rest easier knowing the watch has kept its promise, standing between fragile boats and the vast, indifferent sea. The day in the abbey has been long but unhurried, filled with work and prayer, meals and small kindnesses. Now the sun is sinking beyond the fields, and a hush begins to gather like a slow tide. The bell in the tower tolls a single low note, rolling over the cloisters and gardens, calling the brothers to evening prayer. Lanterns flicker to life along the covered walks as sandals whisper toward the great church. In the nave, shadows stretch long across the worn flagstones. Candles glow in steady rows, their flames small but sure against the deepening dusk. The air smells of cool stone, beeswax, and the faint green breath of the garden carried in by evening breeze. One by one, monks enter and bow before taking their stalls in the choir. They come without haste, yet none linger. The rhythm of this hour is well known to all. Vespers begins with a single voice, low and resonant. Another joins, then another, until the whole choir breathes the psalms together. The sound is deep and warm, rising like incense toward the dark rafters above. No note is forced, no word hurried. It is music shaped by centuries, meant not to dazzle, but to soothe and lift hearts heavenward as night approaches. Outside the high windows, the last gold of sunset fades to violet. Birds settle in the eaves. The first bats flit against the glowing sky. Inside, The chant flows on, timeless and unbroken. The abbot leads the prayers with quiet strength, his voice neither louder nor softer than any other, yet steady as a bell. When the Magnificat is sung, the brothers stand, their habits swaying gently as they lift their hearts with merry song. When the final psalm ends, silence holds for a breath before the abbot gives the blessing. A deep Amen answers, and the service closes without applause or fanfare, only calm gratitude. The monks file out again, candles in hand to light the cloister's darkening paths. Outside, night has deepened. The first stars shimmer faintly above the abbey roof. The refectory glows with soft lantern light as the evening meal is shared. It is a simple supper, bread baked this morning, a thin broth fragrant with herbs from the garden, a few apples sliced and passed along the table. The reader's voice is absent tonight. Vespers has filled the need for words. The meal is eaten in silence, each monk savoring the quiet as much as the food. After supper, bowls and boards are cleaned with efficient care. Brothers move gently about their tasks, no sound louder than the clink of pottery or the faint rush of water from the kitchen cistern. Laughter is rare but not forbidden. Sometimes a small smile passes between friends, a wordless gladness for the day shared. When all is done, the abbey settles further. Some brothers return to the cloister walks, pacing slowly beneath the lanterns as they pray the rosary. Others visit the garden one last time to breathe the cool night air. The fountain trickles softly, and the scent of damp herbs mingles with distant wood smoke. The hives are silent now. Bees rest after their day's labor. The church doors remain open for a little while longer, inviting private prayer. A few monks slip inside to kneel alone before the altar. Candles burn steadily, their light gilding the stone and wood in gentle gold. Shadows sway on the walls as the flames tremble. These last moments before full night are cherished. Time to speak heart to God in solitude, to lay down worries before sleep. At last the bell tolls again, softer now, a call to Compline, the final prayer. All gather once more in the church, but the mood is changed from Vespers. If Vespers is a warm sunset, Compline is a quiet lullaby. The chant is low, tender, and brief. Psalms of trust, prayers for safety in the dark hours ahead. Into your hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit, they sing, and the words seem to settle over every stone. When the last note fades, the abbot sprinkles holy water down the rows, blessing each brother. Heads bow, a faint sigh of peace ripples through the gathered men. Then the candles are carried out, and the church darkens behind them, left with only the steady glow of the sanctuary lamp. The cloisters now are quiet but alive with soft light. Lanterns sway gently in the night breeze. Their golden circles of illumination pool on the flagstones, Monks walk in twos or alone, heading back to the dormitory or lingering for one more silent prayer. No speech breaks the calm, only the sound of sandals and the whisper of robes. Stars wheel above the abbey roof, brilliant now in the deep night. The air is cool and smells of damp earth and herbs. Somewhere an owl calls softly from the orchard. Somewhere else a door closes with a muffled thud. The porter makes his final round, checking gates and locks, moving with the ease of long habit. When he is satisfied, he bows briefly toward the church and retires. Inside the dormitory, beds await in quiet rows. Brothers undress in silence, fold habits neatly, and slip beneath simple woolen blankets. A few read by candle for a short while, small prayer books held close, then snuff the flame and settle. Others kneel briefly at their beds before lying down. One by one the room fills with the soft sound of breathing. The abbey itself seems to sleep now. The scriptorium lies dark, its quills cleaned and laid aside. The garden rests under silver moonlight. The refectory is empty, but still smells faintly of bread and herbs. Only the sanctuary lamp burns on, a small flame keeping watch through the hours until dawn. Beyond the walls, the fields grow pale with starlight. A stream glimmers faintly as it winds past orchard and meadow. Villagers nearby have long gone to their beds, comforted by the sight of the abbey's steady tower against the sky. Its bell is silent for now, but its presence alone is enough to promise safety and prayer. Deep night holds the abbey gently. Its silence is it empty but full of faith, of work well done, of lives given to prayer and service. The stars wheel on, the lamp burns quietly, and within, the brothers rest in the great stillness they have sought all day. The peace here feels older than stone, older even than song, a quiet that carries through centuries and cradles all who surrender to it. When the first faint light touches the horizon, the bell will wake and call again. But for now night reigns, soft, safe, and filled with a listening silence. It is a silence that comforts, a silence that blesses, a silence that whispers of rest deeper than sleep.